eyes on Brazil as they get set for their new era under their new head coach, Carlo Ancelotti, who is, of course, a massive name in the sport, known for being an excellent man manager, and so somebody that a lot of people think will be able to handle some of these big personalities on Brazil. So, Master, when you look at what is to come with Brazil and, you know, the expectations with Carlo Ancelotti at the helm, like, what do you think?
I think the biggest thing Carlo has to do and he's trying to do right now, instilling hope and belief, not only just in this roster, but the entire nation as a whole in Brazil, because it has been a pretty bleak situation for a couple years now, where they haven't really instilled the belief in the players and the system and the federation as a whole.
They've just seemed disjointed.
It seemed disjointed. And it seems very similar in terms of what Carlo was able to do with Madrid the second time around, where they moved on from Cristiano Ronaldo. They were in this transition period. They had some of these youngsters, and this roster was very much in transitional period. Carlo's great at that. He's great at instilling belief, being able to get people to transition from one position and one era that they're in into another. And I feel like that's something that Carlo needs to do in this situation. And he's already seen, you can see the belief he's already instilling in some of these players, as he's talked about, obviously, the Real Madrid guys, but Estêvão, how much he's been praising him at Palmeiras as he's about to go to Chelsea this summer, being able to describe him as a special talent. He's talking up these guys, making sure that everyone gets together, that everything is connected and joined as one again. So that way the players believe and they can play that Brazilian style that we're so accustomed to. The fans can believe and see a team that they see on the pitch that they have joy and pride in, that they've always had for our whole lifetimes. That just has been absent, that I feel like Carlo can bring that to this team, bring that to this nation, and hopefully we can see a much better Brazilian side than what we've seen over the last few years.
And look, you can't argue with his resume, obviously, right? But it is his first international coaching job. Just like see how he adapts to that. It's an entirely different animal. You know?
Yeah, adaptation is one thing, but you got 1 year and you're brought in to do one thing, and that's to win the World Cup. Belief is one thing, but Brazilian fans want a World Cup, and that is what they have their eyes on, and that's why you go get the best manager in the world, whether he's a club manager or an international manager. What he is now is the manager of Brazil.
Hey, and in one season at Real Madrid, couldn't quite capitalize on the Kylian Mbappe era, which, you know, would maybe be one of the blemishes on an otherwise very incredible resume for Carlo Ancelotti. Hey, Mbizo, I want to get your thoughts. What's been the reaction to Carlo Ancelotti's appointment of Brazil?
Well, I think everybody understands that Carlo Ancelotti is one of the best managers in the world, and that's what he's doing here, and that he's familiar with these boys from the Seleção, many of them. But he's also familiar with Brazilian legends of old. He's also familiar with Brazilian football, the legend of Brazilian football, and he's spoken about it many times, how he's humbled, how he's excited to be coaching the best national team in the world, the most historic national team in the world. However, there are people who are still grumbling, not like myself, about what's happening in the background. But we have absolutely no doubt that at least the boost from having a manager like him will be positive. And the players themselves have already spoken very highly of him. They've talked about his style, his personality, how he's communicative, he's curious, he's composed, and his experience and knowledge is very, very obvious. And so that already has got us excited and anxious to see how this era is going to go. But either way, no matter what the result is today, I think he needs time to implement his ideas, but I think CBF is willing to give him that.
Yeah, you talk about time. That's obviously one of the things that I think all managers need. Just on the desk now, we are talking about some of the more feelings, things about belief, things about, you know, the Brazilian national team getting back to their way. But what I want to talk to you about is expectation and delivering results. What is expected of Carlo Ancelotti coming in at the helm for the Brazilian national team?
Well, every manager that manages Brazil has the same expectation. Win everything, and win it well. Win it playing good football, attractive football that resonates with the Brazilian people. And now Carlo Ancelotti in particular, he probably has a little bit more expectation because he is coming in as one of the best managers in history. So the base expectations remain the same. But you guys were talking about how this is a transitional period. So what people are also looking for is some kind of stability. Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti can't control what's happening in the background of the CBF, but these things that happen in the background of the CBF have always been happening in the background of the CBF, and Brazil has still managed to win several World Cups. So the expectations remain the same, a bit heavier on Carlo Ancelotti. But one of the beautiful things is that it feels as though some of the pressure is being taken off the players and put onto the manager. And I think Ancelotti has welcomed that and has already begun to protect the players, has already begun to even protect the CBF. So I think we're all positive about that as well.
He has big shoulders to carry those burdens, as we've seen time and time again. The heavy weight of the Real Madrid shirt and the heavy weight of the Brazilian national team. He is more than fit and more than capable of taking off some of that pressure and carry it on himself. But he goes from one team in Real Madrid that was very top-heavy to a Brazilian side that is also very top-heavy. How will he manage this roster as you look at it, and some of perhaps the issues or the lack of depth that you see on the defensive side with this roster? How do you think he'll manage it, and how do you think this will play out, tactically speaking, with this side?
Well, I think it's important to note that, especially in the center-back position, Brazil hasn't always necessarily been super strong in that position. In fact, many of the World Cups came with them being weak in that position, although having quality wing-backs. Look, it's difficult to say, but I think one thing that's obvious is that no single player can carry the weight of this yellow jersey. I think people relied too heavily on Vinicius Jr. instead of spreading the responsibility across the team. And I think one of Ancelotti's primary goals should be how to synergize these players, how to get them to play more like a collective as opposed to relying simply on the individual talent, which maybe once upon a time was possible because you had 3, 4, 5 Ballon d'Ors playing all at once, some of the best players in history playing all together. That's not necessarily the case, albeit there still is talent. So I think the question is, how does he synergize and get this team playing as a collective, get them to understand that they're not playing for themselves. In fact, sometimes not even playing for their teammates. Who they are playing for are the Brazilian people.
What do you, speaking of potential players for Brazil, I mean, what do you make of, what does the Brazilian fan base make of Estêvão? Obviously, huge hype around him, killed at Palmeiras, headed to Chelsea after the Club World Cup. There's some people mentioning him in the same breath with Yamal, hasn't even, started for the Brazilian national team, is uncapped, in that manner. What's the perception of theirs? Could he be the next, phenom, in Brazil?
I certainly absolutely believe so, and a large part of the population absolutely thinks so as well. I mean, just in terms of the records he's broken here, I mean, he's playing as well as Neymar played before his departure. So he is the best thing coming out of Brazil probably since Neymar. And frankly speaking, many of us believe that he should be thrust into a starting position for the national team anyway, right now, so that he can build up his reputation, build up his experience before the World Cup, and then in the World Cup maybe do something. And if not, surely 2030, he should be one of the principal players. So I don't think people are expecting him to make a complete change in the Seleção, have a huge impact, but we want to see the boy play. We want to see him grow with the Seleção. We want to see him given opportunities. And it's very likely that he gets the starting position today. And if not, certainly he will be an important piece for Ancelotti moving forward as he builds towards the performances he'd like to see next year in the World Cup.
Well, Mbizo, fresh off of a Champions League title, Marquinhos was saying that he kind of hopes that Brazil brings this PSG-type energy, which, seeing what they achieved wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. What did you think about those remarks, and is what PSG has kind of achieved, getting a younger squad and the buy-in that Luis Enrique has been able to get from this group, is that kind of a good model to emulate, whether it is a national team or a club team?
I thought it was a strange comparison, but I do, in his defense, I think he was talking about the team dynamics and context and how situations can change rapidly, a la PSG, in comparison to what they were like 2 or 3 years ago. But I don't quite think the analogy is applicable unless, for example, Brazil ditched some of their big 3 players in lieu of some younger stars, which I don't expect that they'll do. I'll let you decide who the big 3 underperforming players would be for Brazil. And I've spoken about how I think Brazil is plagued by a little bit of Eurocentrism. In my opinion, Marquinhos should forget about what's happening at PSG for the time being. I can understand his propensity to speak about them because he's just gotten an incredible success. But Brazil should forget about Europe. Brazilians should forget about Europe and focus on what's happening here at home. And while it might seem counterintuitive to hire a European coach, in that regard, I've had an experience here where Brazilians speak to me very frequently about the problems in Brazil, about the issues that they have with the government and other socio-economic issues. And I'm the one who has to remind them about some of the beautiful things that exist in Brazil, about some of the beautiful cultural elements and how much I love this country. And so maybe, as you guys have mentioned, Carlo Ancelotti will come in, remind Brazilians about their history, increase their self-esteem, and get these guys, appreciating what it means to play for the Seleção. Because from the outside, it always is the most inspiring, most passionate, most beautiful football in the history of the game.